as you guys already know, Arthur C. Clarke is one of the guy's huge to me. I mean, not only was he just a great writer of science fiction, great scientist, developed the space communication satellite. Um, show Arthur C. Clarke was actually Mysterious World, Strange Powers, all that kind of stuff. That got me interested in do a lot of things. And then even just watching the guy talk, I would just sit there and be like, like in amazement. His video on fractals was really cool. But I kind of was sad to see uh, what he had to say during the end of his life, because he was always a scientist, and I just hate when people these very uneducated people who claim to be atheists. They're atheists, but they're not secular in any way. So what does it matter? They're still trying to bombard people. They still can't see past culture, which is religion, just personal views on things. Which again, personal views and culture that basically makes up the effective, what I would think would be what I call religion. Probably not most people would call it. But he, in the beginning of well, not the beginning of his life, when he was still in the Navy or Army, I think Navy, Royal Marines, uh, or something to that effect. He had his dog tags changed from the default message, which is the Church of England, to pantheism. Uh, and I thought that was, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then in World of Strange Powers, he talked about the Star of Bethlehem possibly being like a pulsar or some dying, like a dying star. And he says how romantic that it is, this great cosmic event which ushers in the Christian era, which I thought is very how should I put it? It's a very romantic way of been putting it. But then at the end of his life, he said, "I want no religious services associated with my burial whatsoever," and he very adamantly spoke in this anti-theist sort of way. But he also had said that about the belief in God, that the universe was not only stranger than we imagine, that it's stranger than we could possibly imagine. Uh, I think a lot of the people, and this is what happened. Pretty much my reaction is when I saw a lot of the anti-theists, what's called the four horsemen of the apocalypse: Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. Now Dawkins always seemed kind of like a snooty ass to me, but the other three, I'm like dead on. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But do you just throw culture out the window? Do you throw religion out the window? I mean, for 2,000 years, literally, you bring a child into the world, it gets baptized in this ceremony that binds it to its family and its ancestors. And then you go on, and say you get married, and there's a certain way of doing it. There's no overthinking it. I mean, it's just the tradition of it. And then when you die, um, I mean, since we do have this formal way of doing it, it actually does help a lot with grief, because you may not know what you should do or this or that. It takes all those kind of things out, so you could just kind of go through it and experience it without having to meddle with all the details about things. Even though obviously there is still somewhat of a burden about just getting everything together, but it kind of lessens the load. And it's very strange. I don't. Does this? It doesn't. It seems like America and well, I can't speak for Western Europe, but that when people decide basically to become, when they want to, be atheists, it seems so irrational that you have to just throw all the rest of this out. Uh, and when I was confronted with the anti-theist, I said that's me. But then one of the things that brought me back to orthodoxy was, wait, what I just did. Well, first of all, it's not pleasurable. It's not really rational because did my belief in God, well, not even belief, because that's even a bad word to use, belief. I mean, how could you believe in God? Because orthodoxy, I mean, again, it's not really just, it can only be experienced. I would still, just because all the prayers were so meditative, I still want to do that meditation. And the set rule of it actually worked better for me than a lot of the Zen meditation. And it was just, why am I breaking away from this community? Why did all that happen? Now, yes, there was the bishop being corrupt, and I couldn't stand him, and I still talk about him being jerks. And I don't really reticently accept things, but you go to a place where they have such meditative chanting, and it makes you feel good when you come out. I mean, it's the most relaxing thing. In about 2 to 3 hours every Sunday, I get to go to a place where I step completely out of the world, and I go into basically a place with different smell, different lighting. I mean, natural light instead of light bulbs, either candles or with light coming through the windows. Tones which you don't hear that are uh, meditative, almost not humdrum. They're beautiful, but whatever. And you have certain actions that you do that are just built into you. Now, this is very seductive, and I can see how people say it in a bad way, but that it always has to be bad, and in every reference, in every way, it's damaging. I mean, that's just not true. So, when people tell me, well, why did you come back to orthodoxy? What, was it Jesus or whatever? It's just too damn painful. I mean, I don't want to say painful, but uncomfortable. Why? What is there any purpose to be outside of that? I can still stand opposed to a lot of these things. There are many parts about, well, certainly I think there definitely are religions that are absolutely destructive, and I would rather see people be atheists than part of those basically cults or whatever. But I think orthodoxy is probably the exception religion for me. And that's the one. I'm coming back to Arthur C. Clarke now. That's the one sad thing, is that I think that a lot of that beauty that he could reach people about the universe, because you could tell that, I'm talking about God or God is everywhere. It really was the universe that he was talking about, that and the movement behind the universe. That science always, when it sees more about how the universe functions, it's in greater wonder. And why that has to be thrown out the window with all this kind of harsh talk. As if you can't be skeptic or secular while being not totally convinced, and there is nothing out there. There is and just trying to piss on everybody's parade. Odd. It just strikes me as odd that the more intelligent people don't just say, "Oh, atheism? Yeah, I know. I know. It doesn't matter. I'm still gonna live my life. Yeah, I know about that stuff, and yeah, I know I don't handle snakes or anything like that. But yeah, okay. But no, people have to keep. Oh, I mean, why people come on this channel? And when even before I started talking about really atheism or other religions, it was just this. I am angry at you for something that I don't understand about you. Because as you can tell by their comments, they project all these Western views of Christianity. It's like none of that. I don't believe any of that. And it's kind of sad because with especially people who like to debate or who care about truth, are very passionate about stuff. The anti-theist stuff, yeah, you're like, yeah, they're all right, they're right, they're right. But then there's a point where you're like, are we going to descend into nihilism? And that's where I think Christopher Hitchens is actually. He said, I read this passage out of the Bible at my father's funeral. I can respect the cathedrals of Rome, and even a lot of with my journey back, it was people just are bad historians, and I would get an argument. Council of Nicaea was blah blah. No, it just wasn't. You're just lying. You're claiming to be a skeptical atheist, and you're just lying about facts just to get your point across. Because the end justifies the means, doesn't it? You can lie about anything scientific, which I've actually heard them just say that blundering things about science or history. But you know what? As long as you get someone to be an atheist, that's the higher truth. How is that not a almost godlike devotion crusade? How is that not the bad part of faith? And it's said that I think people see Arthur C. Clarke's comments like that and say, "Oh, see," and it's like, no. When he was for the most of his life, he had a very romantic view of it, and too many people come on here and say there never has there been a Christian that uh, ever contribute anything to science, or never has there ever been a religious person contribute anything to science. And then you bring up a scientist who is a Christian, like the guy who mapped the genome, and they say, well, he doesn't believe the Earth was created in 6 days, so he's not a Christian. Or he believes in science, therefore he's not a Christian. What asinine? That's just jackassery. I'm making up a new word to describe complete idiocy because they want to be mean and rude and, and I don't know, and can't see that things are bigger than that. To be what I call religion, probably not most people call but he in the beginning of his well, not the beginning of his life, when he was still in the Navy or Army, I think Navy, Royal Marines, uh, or something to that effect. He had his dog tags changed from the default message, which is the Church of England, to pantheism. All that kind of stuff. That got me interested in do a lot of things, and then even just watching the guy talk, I would just sit there and be like, like in amazement. His video on fractals was really cool, but I kind of was sad to see uh, what he had to say during the end of his life, because he was always a scientist, and I just hate when people, as you guys already know, Arthur C. Clarke is one of like the guy's huge to me. I mean, not only was he just a great writer of science fiction, great scientist, developed the space communication satellite. Um, show Arthur C. Clarke was actually Mysterious World, Strange Power. These very uneducated people who claim to be atheists. They're atheists, but they're not secular in any way. So what does it matter? They're still trying to bombard people. They still can't see past culture, which is religion, just personal views on things. Which again, personal views and culture that basically makes up the effective, or what I would think, And I thought that was, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then in World of Strange Powers, he talked about the Star of Bethlehem possibly being like a pulsar or some dying, like a dying star. And he says how romantic that it is, this great cosmic event which ushers in the Christian era.